To the members of the press who are assembled here today and listening across the country, I am asking for your courage to tell it like it is. This is not a time to pretend here that there are two sides to this story. This is not a time to fall back into the reflexive crouch that I so often see, where the authoritarian creep by this administration is ignored in favor of some horse race piece on who will be helped politically by the president's actions. Donald Trump wants to use the military to occupy a U.S. city, punish his dissidents, and score political points. If this were happening in any other country, we would have no trouble calling it what it is, a dangerous power grab.
Yeah, there you go. That was the governor of Illinois, J.B. Pritzker, who is a real force and very effective, I think, as a leader. I really like him, even though he is a super wealthy guy. I won't hold that against him in this case because he's on the right side of things. That is for sure. Hello and welcome to today's episode of Stand Up. I'm very excited to bring you my conversation with State Senator from Michigan, Mallory Mcmorrow. And she is now running for U.S. Senate. And that is coming up in just a minute here. Wanted to thank everybody for joining me at last night's hangout. We do them on Monday and Thursday at 8 p.m. It was over 2 hours that we hung out, like 60 people, and you can watch it if you're a paid subscriber. Relive it. It was wonderful. As always, we've created an amazing community, and that is what my new goal in life is to do, is to try to do all I can to build community here, the stand-up community, and anywhere else that I can. I've got some ideas, and I'll continue to share them with you. But today, I'm going to jump right to my conversation. I don't have your headlines and your clip show because I am taking the day off to head up to Boston with Julia. Haven't really gotten an opportunity to do much with her this summer. We're going to try to go look at some colleges, just her and I together, just for the day, and we're leaving really early. So unfortunately, I'm not going to get to the news today, but I do have a great conversation with Mallory, and I have a great conversation with Wajad Ali up, which I will share tomorrow. But if you want to watch that right now, you can go to YouTube. Right now, youtube.com/standup with Pete. Got a lot of great feedback on that one as well. So that's what I've got for you here today and tomorrow. I hope that's okay with you. Taking a little break from the news for just a couple of days, but I will be back after it on Thursday's show. Right now, it's time to get to Michigan State Senator Mallory Mcmorrow, who proudly represents the 8th Senate District, Northwest Detroit, 10 municipalities in Oakland County, first elected in 2018. She's established herself as a dedicated public servant committed to practical solutions that improve the lives of Michigan residents, and I'm very happy to have her here joining me. She has joined a somewhat crowded field of candidates running for U.S. Senate, for the open Senate seat there in Michigan, and I really like her, and I love this conversation. I've had several with her in the past. It was real cool of her to sit down with me. They have a lot to lose when they sit down and do interviews, especially live like the senator and I did. So I really appreciate it. I hope you like it. Let's do it right now with Mallory Mcmorrow. Yeah, there she is. State Senator now running for U.S. Senate in Michigan, Mallory Mcmorrow. Mallory, welcome back and congrats on everything you've accomplished and this brave new run.
Thank you. Thank you. It is hopeful. It's fun. Are we allowed to have fun? I don't know. It's fun so far.
You always seem to be enjoying even in the chaos because of what seems like for you at least, I'm just making assumptions, it seems like you seem very purpose-driven, and I feel like that's part of your message, too, about what we can all do to kind of have fun and feel better in the midst of what seems like America circling the drain.
I think that's right. And, I just think of how I would be feeling if I wasn't running this campaign right now, and I would probably be like just a puddle on the floor. So, doing something and feeling like I'm trying to get this country back on track, I think is what all of us should be doing. So stop doom scrolling and go talk to your neighbors.
You're very good at talking. There's no doubt about it. I prepared. You always have been. You've always been very charismatic. I mean, you've been that way long before you got into politics. You have many talents. But I watched you on the Daily Show and with Heather Cox Richardson. I mean, I remember when I talked to you way back when nobody knew you as a state senator, but you really put yourself on the map. And one of the reasons is because you're good at talking. How important do you think that is to your candidacy? And, do you ever get, I don't know, I guess it's too much of a softball, but I think the important question is, why is it so important for Democrats to be good communicators? How about that?
Well, first of all, this is about relationships. And, I think Third Way just put out some document that they gave to Politico about here's all the words you shouldn't use. And I just find myself once again, we are overly dissecting how to talk to people. Just go talk to people, touch grass, go outside, go to a bar, talk to your neighbors. And we got to get out of micro targeting ourselves to death and coming up with the perfect message. Just go be a person. And I think it's important for Democrats to realize that 90% of people don't eat, sleep, and breathe politics all day, every day. They live their lives. And my brother-in-law said this, and I think it was just the perfect way to sum it up. Politics is a popularity contest. They will vote for you if they like you. And I heard somebody else say to me recently, if you polled most people, I don't think they could tell you with confidence what Barack Obama's policies were, right, or what Donald Trump's policies are. People vote for them because they like them. There is some sort of connection, and that starts with being a person and building a relationship. And when people trust you and they like you, they will be more open to hearing what your policies, ideas are and what your message is. But if you don't start from just being a human, we're lost.
Well, you have got that down very well. You're also a youngish mom. I don't know where you range in terms of your age and the age of your child. So your kids.
Well, it was my birthday a couple days ago, so I'm now 39.
Okay, so your daughter, is it? No.
My daughter, yeah.
She's 4 now?
Yep, 4.5.
So are most of your peers around the same age? The moms, there's a relevancy to my question, but you're the same age as a lot of the other moms in class. Therefore, I don't know, you connect with them in terms of your experiences in life in a lot of ways, but also as a parent of a young child, which I know a lot of, active politicians don't have. I think one of the problems with the Democratic Party especially is the gerontocracy. I'm not being ageist. I'm just saying I think it's important to have young people in office that are looking out for those interests. So just tell me about that. You have a little 4-year-old. What does that mean for your candidacy? What has it meant for your service so far as a state senator?
Yeah, I think that's right. So I ran for office originally back in 2018, a month after my husband and I got married. So it has been fascinating to have kind of my pre-child political life and post-child political life. It's very different. When I was knocking doors, and I think I've shared the story with you before, there's a woman who grilled me in my first campaign about, did I have any kids, and was I going to have any kids, and how many kids was I going to have, and when was I going to have them? And she finally said, I can't vote for you because I need to know my senator is going to do their job and not just be a mom. And
is it true that was your mother-in-law?
It was not my mother-in-law. She's very proud of me. I'm sure she wishes she could see me more.
That could have been horrible. I'm sorry to your husband, to the whole family. I apologize, but the point is man. The point. Yeah.
But no, it's important, and I think you're right. What I have talked about needing a new generation of leadership, and I do get some pushback from people saying, "Why are you so against older people?" And you were right on. We need to have the entire breadth of lived experience represented in our politics. And right now, the only senator serving, I believe, with young kids right now is Katie Britt on the Republican side.
Really? The only one?
I believe so. Don't quote me on that. Andy Kim, out of New Jersey, young kids. But there aren't that many with young kids who understand. I mean, this week is a perfect example for me. This is the gap week between summer school and the first week of school for preschool.
Mine too. Yeah.
And my husband and I totally screwed it up. We thought it was last week. We didn't think it was this week. And I have been so stressed out all week trying to find childcare for my kid to make sure that I could keep my job and he could keep his job and we could run this campaign. But that's real. That is a real experience that a lot of people go through. I was sitting at my daughter's swim school We're the Great Lakes state. She's got to learn how to swim. We have a lot of lakes around here. And I got a text from somebody who had run for a judge position previously. And she texted me and she said, I didn't even get to say hi. I was wrangling my 3 kids, but can I just say that it was great to see you, you are taking your daughter to swim class and running for Senate. And just how much that means. So, it's a huge part of my story because it's a part of my life. It's who I am. And it is a large part of a lot of people's lives. You're in it too this week, this Gap Week. Why do they do that?
Well, I actually support it. I think the people that in the states that send their kids back before Labor Day are all wrong, and they should all be kicked out of America. Like, it's summer goes to Labor Day. I know, it gets real hot early and all this. I say nonsense. I grew up in New York State. I think the date is right. I like this final week, but I'm open to any debate. Also, I do want to fact check you, and very insensitive for you not to acknowledge the Ossoffs, who just welcomed a baby daughter in June 25, Dr. Alicia Kramer and Senator John Ossoff. So they're young. And they have
that is some bias on my part that I defaulted to the women. Like, there's only moms. Dads are
You were thinking about moms. I was just
dads.
thinking about that young, beautiful boy, John Ossoff. I really like that guy. He's very charismatic, too. I shouldn't have objectified him. But it was just June. You can't keep track of everybody's births. But the point is still the point of having young kids, and I think that's important for a lot of different reasons. And also what inspired you to run originally, of course, you weren't yet a parent, but you were inspired because after the election of 2016, a bunch of young kids we're being super bigoted and racist, and we have compassion for young kids who do that because we know their parents most likely taught them that. But that's part of your origin story is young kids, even though you weren't a parent yet, if I remember correctly.
Oh, yeah, that's right. There was a video that went viral of middle school students chanting, "Build that wall." And it was in the lunchroom. So they're like slamming their fists on the long fold out tables at this Latina girl. And she was so horrified, so terrified. Like, CNN came into our town and they did an interview with her. And she was just in tears. And she said, these are my friends. It's not like they were strangers. They were people that I knew. And I watched that video and it broke my heart so much because they were kids. And, whether it's Donald Trump, whether it was their parents, but somehow this became okay. And I Googled how to run for office. Just that, it truly broke my heart. It broke something inside me. So yeah, I've always thought about, I had such a great childhood. I had such a great upbringing, and I want to make sure that every kid has that. Even if you look a little different and sound a little different, every kid should have a great childhood in this country.
It feels like that to run for office. I flirted with it for like 2 minutes. And anybody who has, even a lot of people who don't do it because it costs too much money. Who has the money that it takes? You've run and got elected in the Michigan State Senate. I'm not sure how many elections you've gone through, but now you're running for U.S. Senate in a somewhat crowded field of qualified looking candidates that are running for this open Senate seat in Michigan against, I think, Mike Rogers, who's running as a Republican, likely, right? Is he the incumbent?
He is not the incumbent. Gary Peters is our senior senator. He is retiring. So we've got an open seat, but Mike Rogers ran for this same Senate seat and lost to Alyssa Slotkin not even a year ago. And he's back, and Trump endorsed him. So he doesn't take no for an answer. The
money thing. I mean, you seem like someone who, had to learn how to run for office, had to build a network, and had to raise money. I hate it. I hate how much money it costs to run for office because it makes it exclusive for certain people. Like, how do you have health insurance and run a full-time campaign? It is a full-time job. Just tell us a little bit about what it took to run for state Senate and how much different it is for running for U.S. Senate, which is a way more money than even running for the U.S. House, Congress.
Yeah, I mean, it's an open U.S. Senate seat in Michigan, which is one of, the handful of battleground states in the country. So this Senate race is likely going to cost at least $60 million for our campaign to raise. It is a staggering amount of money. And I didn't start from, I'm not self-funding my campaign. I don't have a trust fund. I don't have a bunch of wealthy friends that I can call. And when I first decided to run for office, I went through Emerge, which recruits and trains Democratic women to run for office. We learned how to raise money. And I think the most vulnerable thing was separating myself from the ask. I actually write about it in my book, learning how to do this and calling everybody that I went to college with. And I have a story in the book about calling this guy Brian, who I think the last time I had talked to him, we were chugging beer out of Frisbees at like a Frisbee party at Notre Dame. And he lived in Chicago. And I was so nervous. And so like, why would this guy want to talk to me? And you're supposed to make a hard ask. So you're supposed to ask for a specific dollar amount and then wait for the person to think about it and to respond. And I was just stammering. I was like, wouldn't it be so great if more Notre Dame grads were in office? And could you please maybe? And he was just like, I live in Chicago. I don't live in Michigan. Good luck, and hung up. And I just wanted to crawl under the table and die.
Yeah.
Just like, there was I was like, I'm so embarrassed. But, it's like anything. It's a muscle you build up. And I had to really separate myself. People saying no to me was not them saying no to me. It was to the campaign. And there were a lot of people who surprised me, who I never thought would support the campaign, who would come in big. There were a lot of people I thought would be there on day one who weren't. And I ended up raising close to $400,000 in my first campaign, which with no PAC money, not because I didn't ask, but because I was running against an incumbent. They said, absolutely not. We're not giving you any money. And it was a grind. So, interestingly, it is easier now, I think, because I've built up years of, you just have to do it. You call, it is to anybody. I sat next to a woman on the plane last week who, it was so funny. I walk onto the plane, I sit down next to her, and she just starts laughing, and I look at her and I'm like, hi. And she's like, you left me a voicemail last week.
That's awesome.
For money. So now I'm sitting next to people on planes, and I told her thanks for listening to me.
Do you worry about that? Do you worry about that turning people off, all the constant texts? And are you in that game?
Oh God, yeah. I mean, it turns me off. And I am somebody, I will tell people very candidly, like, yes, exactly to your point. There are a lot of really good people who would make great elected officials who will never do it because it costs so much money. So we desperately need to overturn Citizens United, number one. We desperately need to ban corporate PACs in politics. We need to ban congressional stock trading. We have to make it easier for people to get in. And I am honest with people, to get in to change the rules, I have to get in first. And right, these are the rules we have. I
think it's an important point. I also think the point, the argument of we have to overturn Citizens United is like an old argument, because right now the Supreme Court is run by like a village, like cartoon villains, and there's just no way. We're just trying to just hold on to whatever democracy we have. So you have to compete in this atmosphere where you have to raise a certain amount of money. But if you have to raise $60 million, or in your case, like there's a few people running for the Senate seat, you're probably the front runner or likely the front runner, name recognition, state senator, you are Mallory Mcmorrow. A lot of people like you have endorsed you, but don't special interests and come to you right now and say, we'll give you this much if you'll vote this way. I'm not saying that's insidious or corrupt, but like progressive or Democratic likely donors would be organized labor, environmental groups, women's reproductive rights, and so on. They're all looking to endorse. They're all looking to give their money, but they want something from you. Again, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. If you say to Planned Parenthood, rate me and give me your money, then fine. But also the argument can be made that you are going to, make certain choices on your platform or decisions based on policy, based on the money. How do you answer that when people insinuate it?
Yeah, so we made a hard, and it truly is a hard decision at the beginning of this campaign, that I would not take a single dime of corporate PAC dollars, which it is much easier to call those groups and they, have the $5,000 check and they're ready to go. And it's disgusting. It's a business of funding campaigns. That makes it significantly harder to raise money without it. But I think especially right now, where going back to our first comment about we got to build relationships, people do not trust politics and politicians and think it's fundamentally broken. And I think about the number of people who just did not vote last year because they think everything is corrupt and everybody's corrupt. So we decided to make a bet that we would do it this way to start to rebuild trust from the beginning. I very proudly outraised everybody in the field in my first quarter with $2.1 million raised from 28,000 real people. So to everybody who I left a voicemail for and texted, thank you. It is a massive amount of people. And we did it with zero corporate PAC dollars. So, I want people to know that when I go to Washington, I'm voting with their interests in mind and not the other way around. We will seek out support from organizations like Planned Parenthood, like Giffords and Moms Demand Action, where it has been a core issue of mine, something that I've worked on in the legislature. And the ask is going to be, I hope you support me because of my track record, not with any expectation on the other end. Like, I am who I am. I'm not going to seek out endorsement or support from groups that are just antithetical to who I am as a person.
You had, I like that answer. But the problem with it is, of course, when you choose, I don't know what the Democrats running in the primary have chosen, but when you choose not to take corporate PAC money, you're making a statement by that, and you're hopefully making a bet that will bring in more money from smaller donors that appreciate you not taking rich people's money. But I don't know if Republicans ever turn down corporate money. And some people obviously fund their campaign. I'm sure we can think of some Democrats that have done it. They're more likely to be these wealthy Republicans who end up doing that, and they're always like these unpopular asshole men who just
Mike Rogers we were surprised at how little he raised in his first quarter, but he doesn't have to, because there's a super PAC supporting him that raised $5 million in the same quarter, funded entirely by a guy named Tim Dunn, who is a Texas oil billionaire, white Christian nationalist who wants to eliminate public education. So that's what we're up against.
That's great. So that's, by the way, I don't know where that is on the Overton window at this point, but seems pretty dead center in the Republican Party. Christian nationalist who wants to overturn public education. You're trying to find this post that you had that went viral. I'm sure maybe I'm looking at the wrong one. You're on everything, which I think is smart. Every platform, but about your diagnosis about what's wrong with the Democratic Party, the Democratic brand, which I don't know. I think I have a different opinion on it than a lot of people, but that's probably because I'm so inside it and I pay such close attention to it. So my opinion doesn't really matter, and I won't take up this time that I have you to explain it. What is that thread? What do you think is wrong currently? Why are Democrats so unpopular?
It goes back to trust. There are so many people, and I don't blame them for being angry, who will say things to me like, why didn't the Democratic Party codify Roe when they had all the power on the federal level to do it? Why? Why did we have to wait for Roe to fall? Why did the states have to do it? And you have every right to be pissed off. This was a party that fundraised off of it for years and would send you all the texts and say, give me $5, reproductive rights are under attack. And then when you don't do the damn thing that people elect you to do when you have the power to do it, why would anybody?
Were there the votes? Sorry to interrupt you. I thought the answer why the Democrats didn't codify Roe is because there weren't enough votes in the Senate to overcome the filibuster. But maybe I don't remember. Yeah,
that may be true, but then don't lie to people in fundraising. Like, that is honest relationships. You were telling people you were going to do a thing, you have to do a thing. And I think that for me, number one, you got to talk like a real person, go out there, meet people, build relationships. But then if you're going to run on something and people give you the power to do that thing, you got to do it. So I think we have a really compelling story to tell about what we've done here in Michigan, where, I got elected in 2018. I beat a Republican incumbent. I came into the Senate in a minority. The chamber had been controlled by Republicans since 1984, my entire lifetime. And instead of just accepting that, I had a viral speech in 2022, and we leveraged that spotlight. I opened a PAC. I raised millions of dollars for a dozen other state Senate candidates, and we helped flip control of the chamber for the first time in 40 years. And then we passed sweeping legislation on, repealing the seniors' pension tax, repealing our 1931 abortion ban, expanding access to reproductive care, banning child marriage, which was still legal in Michigan until just last year, sweeping gun violence prevention measures. We passed the strongest clean energy legislation in the entire Midwest. We passed filter first legislation, so no child will ever have to drink lead-tainted drinking water in a school or a child care center ever again. And I could go on and on and on. But we need to show people that we are a party that is going to fight for you and deliver for you. If you have our back, we will have yours. It's not that complicated. But I just, that trust is fundamentally broken. And I think a lot of people look at the Democratic Party and the Republican Party and say, and we saw this in Michigan, neither of these parties is fighting for me. And we saw more people vote for Donald Trump in Michigan than vote for anything else. There was down ballot drop off, which is why we elected a Democratic senator and Donald Trump, because there are people who just want to blow it up. And I can't blame them.
On the issue of crime in Michigan, I guess if you want to talk about it, a good friend is involved in this amazingly successful policy, not only in Detroit, but in cities across the country, called violence interruption, which I'm sure you're familiar with. And it's very effective. And it's hard to bring down crime. I would argue, based on the sociologists and public policies experts I've talked to, a lot of it has to do with sociology, with does your community have a community center? Are there places to be? It's about poverty a lot of times, and opportunity a lot of times, and space. And so on. And more densely populated places are more likely to have crimes than places where there's 9 houses. You know, I mean, I lived in one of those places and I committed plenty of crimes and got arrested for mailbox baseball. I'm not proud of it. I was an accessory, Mallory, but I was caught. Those are the types of crimes. But the point is, what do you think of that issue animating people? Because I live in a community that's one of the safest in New York State. And yet some of my neighbors, they're likely conservative, but some liberals too, are so terrified of crime. And I'm like, where? What are you talking about? But it's about the feeling. And it's such a hard argument to win. I was on CNN the other night, Friday night, with some right-wing guy, and he was screaming about crime. And I said, can't we agree, liberals and conservatives, Democrats and Republicans, nobody's for crime. And he said, no, Democrats are for it. And I'm like, I'm out of here. Like, I can't. I wanted to fight the guy. Thoughts?
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, we have lost the narrative on this. And I think you start from the right place of Democrats. I mean, Americans, let's just start there, want to live in safe communities, and we want to be free from crime. And we want to know that when we send our kids out to play, that they're going to come home at the end of the day. In Detroit specifically, we've seen huge success in community violence intervention programs, and something that we're talking about very openly right now. We are in divided government in the state. Republicans took control of the state house. They have refused to pass a budget, so they are careening us towards a government shutdown that's completely avoidable in the state level. And something that happened in Detroit a few weeks ago, there was a 4-year-old who had just jumped out of his mom's car, was running towards the slide on the playground, and was gunned down. There was an 18-year-old who jumped in front of the bullet to try to save this kid's life, who was also killed. And there was a group that had been very successful doing community violence intervention in that neighborhood who had to stop their programming because the state hadn't passed a budget and their funding was cut off. So, you know, when I look at divided government, and we've got Matt Hall here, who's the Speaker of the House, who fashions himself as Timu Trump. He's doing, you know, these press conferences for an hour at a time. There are real world consequences. And because they want to play games with the budget, you cut funding to a program that was wildly effective. And I talked to some of the leaders of the local community violence intervention program who said, we knew who did this and we could have stopped it. So we have to start from a place of talking about it in a really visceral way. Something that I put out a video when Kristi Noem was in town. She came to Detroit. She hosted a big press conference talking about the crisis at our northern border because those damn Canadians are getting ready to attack us or something. I don't know. I've never heard a Michigander have beef with a Canadian. But, you know, they're ginning up all of this fear. And we're at a moment where the one big terrible bill, you know, increases ICE funding to $45 billion. At the same time, we are cutting Medicaid and Medicare and Social Security, you know, food for kids at schools, education funding, Title I funding, all of it. And it's not doing anything to make us any more safe. The point that I made in this video was it's just security theater. They've realized that it's actually really difficult to go after criminals, which is why they're going after moms who are trying to immigrate the right way to stay with their kids. Why they're going after, here in Detroit, there was an 18-year-old who was detained driving himself to a field trip. He was 3 credits away from graduation and he has been deported. And it actually makes us less safe, because the most important thing for law enforcement to be effective is to have trust with the community. If you see something, say something. Yeah. But if they've eroded that trust, where now if you don't happen to be as white as you or I, you don't want to call the police and you don't want to work with investigators because you're worried that you're going to be picked up and detained, then that makes all of us less safe. So as the Democratic Party, I think that needs to be our message, that the Republicans and the Trump administration are making us less safe.
And I mean, you don't even, I'm sure you can speak to it, but mention the economic effect of deporting a whole bunch of what we learned were called essential workers. We learned this phrase during COVID. Now they're going to get rid of these people. I mean, restaurants and businesses are already suffering because if they're still here, they're not showing up for work because they don't want to get destroyed, separated from their family. There's a lot to talk about that. As a senator, if you were a senator, you would have a vote on immigration. But of course, we know that Republicans will never allow a law to pass because they want it as an issue. That's why it always irks the shit out of me when interviewers, anchors who should be more respectable or responsible, I should say, on the issue, forget to mention Republicans will not let anything pass because they want it to be a divisive issue. I'll get off my soapbox to ask you a more important question as a U.S. Senator. How do you thread this needle, this complicated and touchy subject about the Middle East? Your state, Michigan, is like 2/3 Arab American, the highest percentage of Arab Americans, I think, not 2/3 Arab American of its population, but the highest percentage of Arab Americans. Obviously, a lot of Jewish people in Michigan, and I'm not saying those two sides have picked sides on this issue, but it's a tough issue for a lot of Americans. It's divided the Democratic Party. However, at this point, where we are at now with that issue and what we are seeing play out with this famine and starvation, if you were a senator today, would you vote to stop funding Israel until they stop this? I mean, is that a hard thing for you, or is it like a needle that you have to thread?
No, it's not a hard thing. I have said in interviews, I put out a video publicly, this has come up unsurprisingly at every single public event I have done over the last, especially 3-4 weeks. And you're right. We have the largest population of Arab Americans side by side with a significant Jewish population, many of whom have direct ties to Israel. I would have supported the Sanders resolution to cut off funding for offensive weapons because the immediate need is the humanitarian crisis and the starvation in Gaza. Like, you have to address that. There was a really good piece by Yair Rosenberg in The Atlantic a few weeks ago making the argument that, Netanyahu should flood Gaza with so much humanitarian aid that it becomes valueless. Their argument is that Hamas is stealing it and they're selling it at high prices. Well, put so much aid into Gaza that it makes that incentive go away. And even when I talk to members of the Jewish community, it's split on this issue, but there is an understanding that Netanyahu's continued push into Gaza, the way that he is going, is actually making long-term peace and security for Israel less likely, because you see perception shifting around the world, and people are horrified. People who are not personally connected to this issue. I was out in Grand Rapids on the west side of the state, and a woman, stopped me and kind of very quietly said, I hope you do the right thing on this, because I can't watch these videos or see these photos anymore and know that my tax dollars are supporting it. So what I said was, we need to pause offensive weapon sales to Israel, make sure the humanitarian crisis is addressed immediately. Then you can encourage Hamas to release the hostages. You can negotiate a permanent ceasefire. I've been encouraged to see neighboring Arab states be encouraging Hamas to not only disarm, but to come out of power so that you can negotiate to a permanent two-state solution where there's independence and peace and security for Israelis and independence and peace and security for Palestinians. That should be the stance of the United States. And Senator Slotkin, who is our newest senator from Michigan, who herself is a Jewish senator, effectively said exactly that Netanyahu has operated for too long on this idea that the United States is going to have his back no matter what, and that he's taken advantage of that relationship, and it's time to use leverage to end the crisis now.
Do you see any daylight with her stance and your stance on the issue?
With Senator Slotkin, no, I think we're pretty close aligned. Within the primary, where I'm running, we've got some difference of opinion, but I thought her statement was really eloquent and thoughtful, especially coming from her personal background. Will
there be a debate for the primary?
Oh yeah, this is a race in a year, so it's a little bit early. When people are plugged in next year, there will for sure be a debate.
Last question, and the most important kind of to me about politics is I've often wanted to kind of produce and have tried to talk about government in a positive way. I've wanted to try to produce like a pro-government propaganda film. I think there's so many people, including you, that do great things at every level. I am not a cynical, disenchanted person because I've gotten to know people like you and I've seen the actual achievements that you make and are responsible for voting for supporting, for convincing people that matter these policies that make lives better, create opportunity in healthcare and employment and so much more. I mean, for example, with guns. I mean, but it doesn't stop. The gun violence doesn't stop in Michigan. You just had a shooting there in Royal Oak where you live. We're all too familiar with these. These two legislators in Minnesota were shot and killed. Well, one and her husband, obviously everybody knows that story. I thought about you because you've been, you're in the big spotlight and get threatened and you put yourself out there. But just my question is about government. What do you say to people who've completely lost faith in government? They're cynical. How do you bring them back in by talking about the actual things that you do every day, that government does every day, that frankly, this is just me saying it, we're so spoiled and fat and happy in so many ways, we don't even realize how much government does for us in so many levels, including things like teachers and much less infrastructure, places you didn't even know existed. How do you convince people that government isn't broken and isn't the enemy that, that Reagan created, started saying?
I left the private sector and got into government and ran for office. Yes, because of that video, but because I wanted to do good. And government is the only institution that by design has to serve everyone. You're not going to get that in the private sector. You're not going to get that in philanthropy. You can do a lot of good, but if you genuinely want to change the direction of the community and the country for the good of everyone, government is the only place to do it. This is a country where every child has access to a great education. Do we need to improve it? Of course. I got into government because I had a lot of frustrations with the government, but not to blow it up, because I wanted to make it better. And I love that you talked about a documentary. That's something that I've talked about. I'm on a statewide brewery tour right now where we're going to breweries all over the state. We're just having conversations with people.
Do you actually like beer?
I love beer. I'm a big beer person. Okay. So it's I'm the beer defender of the year for 2025 from the Michigan Brewers Guild.
I had no idea who I was talking to.
It's a major award. But I've been pleasantly surprised that at every single one of our stops, somebody has brought up a concern of, how do we bring research back into NIH? How do we bring staffers back? People are horrified by the cuts. And what I've said at every event is we need to tell these stories. That's what I want to help bring into the Senate, especially as somebody who came up in the digital and social media age and was the creative director for Gawker Media and, worked at a production company that did documentary films. We got to tell these stories, because I fundamentally believe that once people know what their tax dollars are going to and all of these incredible stories, they will be less likely to believe Elon Musk and Doge and that we have all this waste, fraud, and abuse that they have to cut. I just think that we have, and this is a fault of the Democratic Party, we are too married to process, and we're not telling the stories of the outcomes. And that's not the legislators. That's the career civil servants who are working in all of these state departments and, spending 30 years trying to find the cure for cancer and, what that looks like every day. We got to tell those stories.
I said that was the last question, but this is one more, and it's personal and it's easy, and I'm really interested in it because as I was preparing, I was reminded that you, one of your first big achievements was you won an award for car design, right? Mazda?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I was just thinking about, because my daughters are 20 and 17, and my younger daughter's getting a senior year of high school. And so my question was what is your advice to young people? Because what I was thinking, I was well, it seems like our track was creative design of some sort. And then she got into media and then government and politics. And that's you're a long way from being a creative designer, I guess. And I wonder why you've been successful in different lanes and what you would say to young people, and I don't know if it's separate, but to parents about what they can do there's so much pressure to make a choice, and now we don't even know if college is worth it, and AI and so on. I know that's changed even since you were college age, but what is your advice for young people who are looking for a path in life?
I mean, first of all, go easy on yourself. There is no perfect path. There is no perfect first job, I meet with a lot of kids now, who they want to lay out their entire like life plan with me. They want to go
my daughter.
political science, and then they want to get an internship, and then they want to get a job.
Yep.
Just take a job. My first few jobs, yes, I won a car design competition, and then I graduated in 2008. So I had this great internship, and then I had a degree, and instead of designing cars, I was sleeping in the back of my car.
The worst. Oh my God.
Worst.
Really? Did you really sleep in a car like Jewel? Where is that in your origin story? That should be on the campaign.
I've been telling that story a lot more now. To connect with people and say, I did everything right and I got screwed. And you're going to get screwed too at some point, and then you find an opportunity and build relationships. I think my big piece of advice is you never know who you're going to run into again at some point in your life. So don't be a dick, and opportunities will open themselves up for you. I have a very non-traditional career path. And I think especially now with the advent of AI, you're likely going to have to change your career multiple times throughout your life. So don't be too precious about it. Work hard and be willing to pivot.
Oh, I love all of that. That's great advice. You should do more. I mean, I'm sure you're doing plenty of talking to young people, but that's really sound and open advice. And don't be a dick is such good. The origin of being a dick often for men and women is about like competition and trying to beat somebody out for something. But I've found a billion times in my own self-interest, I should be collaborate and opening opportunities for people, because that shit comes back every time.
Oh, yeah. The world is so small. You are going to run into the same people over and over and over again in ways you didn't expect. And if they remember having a good experience with you the last time, they're going to be more likely to want to work with you.
What's your favorite kind of beer? I like beer, but not good beer. And somebody that knows me, ridicules me rightly. I don't like good beer. Do you like, I imagine you like good beer, like craft brew, et cetera.
I do. It's the end of summer, so my go-to is either Sheboygan Blood Orange Honey or Short's Soft Braid Shandy, which is like a mix of a fruity beer with a little bit of lemonade, which is very pleasant.
Both sound absolutely disgusting. Mallory, Senator Mcmorrow, I really appreciate you joining me. I wish you the best of luck on the campaign. Stay safe. Keep doing everything you're doing. It's very inspiring, and I'm really grateful that you always come back and join me here.
Always. Thanks for being on the cutting edge before anybody knew who I was.
Love it. Yeah, there she goes. State Senator Mallory Mcmorrow running for U.S. Senate. Go look it up. If you're in Michigan, you want to support her, or even if you're not, you can send money. And I hope that she will come back and join us again. McMorrowforMichigan.com if you want to support. All right, that's it. That's all I've got for you. I will talk to you tomorrow with Wajad Ali. Take care of yourself, and I will talk to you tomorrow.
Oh, you better stand up. When you're tired of begging, saying pretty please, that's the time you gotta finally get up off of your knees. When you can't see the forest for the burning trees, you got to stand up. Hey, you've been sitting so long, you got the creaky knees, you got to stand up. Stand up. I think you're driving wheels with leaking grease. Boy, you better stand up. Stand up. Well, there's a whole lot more of us who know what's right. They'll keep right on ignoring us if we keep sitting tight. You got to open up the window to let in some light. You got to stand up. That's right. You got to rise up. You got to stand up. You got to stare the devil straight in the eye. Let him know it's his turn to go. See it clear when all you hear is a lie. Don't get up off of your butt, get down off of your fence. Even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense. And you stand up, stand up. No need to point your rifle to defend your town. Just stand up, stand up. You know they can't deny what you're laying down. Oh, you better stand up. Stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. She's the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up. Stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up. They had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the They knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. Alright, we got to speak up, we got to reach up and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside. And listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand